wrestler's finisher move is how they win matches, so it goes without saying that it's a very important move in their arsenal. It's so important, in fact, that so many wrestlers spend hours trying to come up with a unique move that is only used by them. But as unique as that move might be, if it becomes popular enough with the years, you're gonna find other people starting to use it. And hey, that's what we're gonna be looking at today. We're gonna be looking at some of the more iconic WWE finishers that have been done by multiple WWE superstars, and we're gonna determine who did it better. And hey, as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm confident that you're gonna like this channel because we upload daily wrestling content, so go ahead and give us a subscribe. All right, let's start off with one of the most iconic finisher moves of the Attitude Era, the Stunner. Current day, the Stunner is done by none other than Mr. Kevin Owens. And Kevin Owens didn't always use the Stunner. For a long time, he used what was called the pop-up powerbomb. And I gotta be honest with you, as much as I love Kevin Owens, to me, it still doesn't feel like the Stunner should be his finisher move. It's not as if I'm married to the idea of only Stone Cold having the Stunner, but there's just a level of swag that Stone Cold brought to this move that I just don't think that Kevin Owens respectfully has. I just think there's, I don't know, man. It's everything from the kick, from how he grabs the opponent's head, that Stone Cold just did more cool. I don't know how to explain it. And there was also like an extra level of oomph and power when Stone Cold did it. The way that Stone Cold would drop into the ground just seemed a lot more dynamic and a lot more explosive than Kevin Owens has ever been able to do it. So I gotta say, I don't love Kevin Owens' Stunner. I don't think that it should be his finisher. I think he should go back to the pop-up powerbomb. To me, the pop-up powerbomb is synonymous with Kevin Owens. When I see a pop-up powerbomb, I think of Kevin Owens, regardless of who's doing it. But when I see him do the Stunner, I don't know, like I just don't get the same level of uniqueness that I got from his pop-up powerbomb. So I don't love the Kevin Owens Stunner. And here's Stone Cold Steve Austin's Stunner. Now, mind you, I am showing you one of the greatest Stunner cells of all time, but as you can see, there's just a level of cool, a level of swag that comes with Stone Cold Stunner that I just don't think is there and available with Kevin Owens's. Also, I will point that the Stunner is only as good as the person selling it. Here's a not so fantastic sell as the one before. But yeah, there's been iconic sells throughout the years. Like there's one from The Rock where he just flops around like a fish. I gotta say that Stone Cold Stunner is significantly better than Kevin Owens. So I'm giving Stone Cold the victory on this one. Next up, we have the Cutter. If you don't know what the Cutter is, it's the RKO nowadays, basically. And hey, here's the RKO. And the RKO at this point is synonymous in the conversation of the greatest finisher of all time. It's got it all. It can be set up. It can come out of nowhere. It looks devastating. It's a move that you can perform on anybody, regardless of their size, whether they're a cruiserweight or somebody giant like the Big Show. It can come from being on the ground, or heck, sometimes it can even come from the top of a cage, or hell, to quote the meme, it could even come out of nowhere. Randy Orton has just made this move so iconic, and he does this differently than some other people that have done the Cutter in the past, in that he takes a jumping start as opposed to just dropping them on their head, as you'll see some other people that do the Cutter. But Randy Orton's Cutter, RKO, whatever you want to call it, is just a thing of absolute beauty. But again, sometimes like the Stunner, it's sometimes only as good as the person taking it. I've seen some pretty bad RKOs. This is not one of them, but it's going to be tough to beat Randy's RKO. So this is Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, who did spend time in the WWE, albeit not very long, but he is the man that popularized the Cutter. He didn't invent it, but he definitely popularized it. And yeah, there's a big difference between Randy Orton's Cutter and DDP's Cutter. DDP's Cutter it doesn't really have the feeling of coming out of nowhere, but I do think that in certain scenarios, it is more devastating than the RKO, because it feels like DDP is just falling as opposed to using his, I don't know, like jumping to gain leverage. Like he just grabs them and then just drops them, almost like a Stunner, but instead of hitting the person's shoulder, they're just hitting their face on the ground. This is one of the few where he actually like jumps, but for the most part, like he does not jump during his Cutters, and it makes them look very, very devastating. But I gotta say, maybe it might be a form of recency bias. It might even be the fact that, you know, it's a meme, but it is one of the most iconic finishers of all time. I have to give this one to Randy Orton. Next up, we have the pedigree. And in recent years, the pedigree was used by Seth Rollins as his main finisher when the curb stomp was banned from the WWE. That being said, he has recently gone back to using the curb stomp, and now unfortunately the pedigree is more of a signature move than anything else. I haven't seen Seth Rollins win with a pedigree in an incredibly long time, which is a shame because this move used to be one of the most protected finisher moves in WWE. It was very rare to have somebody kick out from the pedigree. So it's definitely had a bit of a fall from grace. I don't necessarily believe that it's Seth Rollins' fault. But I just believe that this move, ever since it's become a signature move as opposed to just a proper finisher, has definitely lost a lot of its allure. Whenever Seth Rollins does it, it only to me gets an audible cheer because it reminds me of Triple H as opposed to, oh my God, the match might actually be over. So yeah, I don't love the Seth Rollins pedigree these days. I think he delivers it quite well though. So there is that to talk about. But then we have Triple H, the master of the pedigree, the cerebral assassin. And throughout the years, his pedigree did have to evolve to become a little bit more safe. In earlier years, he did used to fully hook their arms and not let go. As you can see here with Goldust, he lets go at the very last second, which of course protects the wrestler a little bit more. And I think, let's see, yeah, this one he lets go as well. But this is a good example of like how devastating that move really used to be, where he just refused to unlock the arms, and it looked so much worse back then in the Attitude Era. But yeah, like Triple H, if he hit this, like he was winning, right? Like, so in terms of legitimacy, it definitely beats Seth Rollins's pedigree, so I have to take Triple H on this one. Next up, we have the Tombstone. And let's look at Kane's Tombstone. Kane's Tombstone, you'd think at first glance it's very similar to The Undertaker's. However, there is a difference in that Kane does a sudden drop as opposed to The Undertaker, who does a wind-up. So Kane just, as you can see, just drops, right? I'll show you one more. Actually, this was more like The Undertaker, where he does a bit of a wind-up. But the traditional Kane Tombstone is he just like randomly drops. This is The Undertaker's Tombstone, where he almost gets like a bit of momentum to drop them even harder. And if you're really unlucky, you're unlucky enough to get the rare Undertaker jumping Tombstone, and we don't see this one very often. Here's the move that retired Shawn Michaels. It's fitting that it was a jumping Tombstone. But yeah, that's the main difference between the Undertaker Tombstone and the Kane Tombstone, in that the Undertaker like winds it up as opposed to Kane, who just sits. And I guess they both have their ups and downs. I think with Kane, I like the fact that I don't know when he's gonna drop, but if I'm talking about like how devastating one looks over the other, I gotta go with Undertaker because of that wind up. So I'm giving the nod to the Undertaker on this one. Next up, we have the Spear, and we have a few people here in contention. So we have Edge's Spear. Okay, I've weirdly seen people say that they like Edge's Spear. I don't know if I'm in the minority here. I think he's got one of the worst spears of all time. It looks like a gentle hug. I gotta be honest, it looks like a gentle hug compared to some of the others on this list. Like, for example, okay, actually, you know what? That's one of the better Edge ones. But look at this. That's a spear. Granted, that's, one of the best spears of all time because it's Dolph Ziggler taking it. But the majority of Goldberg's spears had this level of intensity. It felt like he was folding people in half and rearranging people's organs. There's also Braun Breaker's Spear. Braun Breaker's Spear is so badass because he leaps like a bullet. He leaps like a bullet, like the as opposed to the Goldberg one, because the Goldberg one, he's just so strong, powerful, and fast. He just runs at you, right? As opposed to the Braun Breaker one, where he gets 2 feet of air jumping at you. So I do really like the Braun Breaker one. I think Braun Breaker probably has the best spear today. There is also Roman Reigns as well. In terms of iconic spears, I think we have to have this one in the conversation because, of course, we have the Tribal Chief, and he himself is iconic. Anything that he does really needs to be in consideration for iconic. But I think it's better than Edge's Spear, but I just don't think that it holds a candle to the likes of Braun Breaker or Goldberg. I mean, one more time, look at these two. They're just so much better than Edge and Roman Reigns, but they all pale in comparison to the gore. The gore from Rhino, this was filthy. Like, he just annihilated people and tore them in half with this thing. I'm gonna give it to Rhino, but if you gave it to Braun Breaker or Goldberg, I wouldn't be upset. The Mandible Claw. So we have the Fiend's Mandible Claw versus, of course, Mankind's Cactus Jack's Mandible Claw. They're both the exact same move. However, I gotta say that the Mick Foley version adds that extra je ne sais quoi of the dirty sock. All right, it adds definitely more to the presentation of it. I will say that the Fiend's Mandible Claw inherently just feels more sinister. It feels like he's sucking the lifeblood out of somebody, as opposed to the Mandible Claw, which I think feels like, you know, you're being suffocated. This feels almost supernatural with the way that he delivers this move and how he cinches it in. It feels like that wrestler that's taking the Mandible Claw is like legitimately being drained out of their life force. So I love the Fiend's Mandible Claw. I will go with Mankind's Mandible Claw purely because of the presentation aspect of it. I love Mr. Socko. Mr. Socko, honest to God, is more popular than a lot of wrestlers that have had full careers in the WWE. Like, that says something, that the move not only got Mick Foley over, but it got a fictional Socko. I guess it's not a fictional sock, it's a real sock. Mr. Socko's real to me, damn it. I'm gonna go with Mick Foley. The GTS, go to sleep. We have CM Punk's GTS, and I do really like the GTS from CM Punk. That being said, his GTS in recent years has really deteriorated. Like, if I don't know if you've seen it yet, but a couple of weeks ago we had that terrible GTS on CM Punk that looked like he literally just hit him with a pillow, like he barely touched him. I do like the CM Punk GTS, especially, you know, prime CM Punk. That being said, the originator of the GTS, a lot of people don't know, was former WWE superstar Hideo Itami, who is famous in Japan by the name of Kenta. And Kenta's GTS, I'm telling you, man, it looks like he is replacing your teeth with his knee. This is a GTS. The thing is that CM Punk's GTS often looked like he was hitting them with his thigh. Kenta, it was all kneecap, nothing but kneecap, baby. And yeah, I'm gonna go with Kenta's GTS on this one. It just always looked more devastating to me. Next up, we have the ankle lock, and we have a few here. We have Jack Swagger. This is one of his better ankle locks. I always felt like Jack Swagger kind of just held the ankle, but sometimes he gets brutal like this and really just starts twisting it and yanking on it. Then we have Chad Gable, who I think unfortunately has probably one of the worst ankle locks when we're comparing him to some of the other folks on this list. And I don't think I've ever seen him win with the ankle lock, unlike Jack Swagger, who like actually like won shit with the ankle lock. So I gotta point that out. At the very least, Jack Swagger has won matches, even though more often than not he was winning with his gut wrench powerbomb than the ankle lock. So the ankle lock for Jack Swagger was really like a secondary finisher, if anything. But I've never seen Chad Gable finish off anybody with this. However, I've seen plenty of people, even the likes of Brock Lesnar and John Cena, tap out to this move, the ankle lock. This is Kurt Angle's primary finisher. I know he has the angle slam, but like when this is cinched in, it's over. Like, everyone has tapped out to this at some point or another. I will even the Undertaker at one point tapped out to this, even though the ref didn't see it. So in terms of the people that have fallen victim to this ankle lock, the list is a whole Hall of Fame class. That being said, too, the way Angle grabs the ankle and just hugs it so close to his chest, I don't have it here, but there's a variation of it where he goes on the ground and locks his own legs around the opponent's legs and then just cinches in the ankle lock even deeper. That's filthy. But yeah, I got to give this to Kurt Angle, and personally, it's not close. Next up, we have the sharpshooter. The most famous sharpshooter has to be Bret Hart, and Bret Hart's sharpshooter, that shit looks like it hurts. Can we admit that? It looks like he's got that shit locked in, pulling back. Everything just looks like it's in pain. Ankles, thighs, knees, low back, everything just looks like it's getting porked to its absolute maximum by Bret Hart. And then we have The Rock sharpshooter that looks like he's just sort of resting on people and doesn't really put any pressure on anything or any body part. I think The Rock not only doesn't have the best sharpshooter, I think it's a terrible sharpshooter. I love The Rock. It hurts to say that, but The Rock sharpshooter, no, come on. Sting's sharpshooter, on the other hand, I know this is from AEW, but Sting's sharpshooter is the closest one to rivaling Bret Hart's. At the very least, Sting does by the way, for him, it's not called a sharpshooter, it's called the Scorpion Deathlock, but at least like Sting really like sits on that low back and really torques. But even though Sting does it well, let's go back to that Bret Hart one. Like, look at this torque, dude. Look at that torque. It's crazy. All right, I'm taking Bret Hart here. I decided to call this one father and son. Why? Because we're doing Eddie Guerrero's Frog Splash versus his real son, Dominic Mysterio's Frog Splash. And I do really like the Dominic Mysterio Frog Splash. It's actually different than Eddie's in a way. Dominic Mysterio's Frog Splash really is more about height. Well, Eddie's always kind of seemed about length. I don't know how to explain it, right? Like Eddie never really got like an insane amount of height, but it just always felt like he got just so much distance. I will also say as well, Eddie was the master of timing the actual splash part to the very last second. As you can see, he stretches his arms like literally last second, as opposed to Dominic, who is already fully stretched well before he lands. We look at this one more time, you can see he's already fully stretched, as opposed to Eddie, who lands the stretch. I don't know if that necessarily makes the move better, but to me, I feel like there's a higher skill ceiling to time that, to make it look like the full stretch and the full splash is landing at the same time that the body is. So I'm gonna give this one to Eddie Guerrero. Next, it's the book bottom. I'm calling this one the book bottom because it's Booker T's bookend versus The Rock's rock bottom. And look, I'm taking the bookend on this one. The bookend always seems like it gets more height. The bookend always just seems like it's more of a proper slam with like user Booker T actually using his full leverage of his body and weight to slam the person down, as opposed to The Rock's rock bottom always kind of felt like he was just kind of falling with them. So it just never really had the same level of thud and explosiveness that Booker T's bookend had. So I'm going to give this one to Booker T. And that's it. By the way, I got banned on TikTok, so if you think that you're following me on TikTok, you're not anymore. My new TikTok is down in the description below, SantiZapMR. Go follow it, okay? All right, now get out of here.